People bustle through the streets, horses filling the roads, pulling their carts and carriages behind them like any other day. It's still early enough that most head towards the centre of the smaller districts where markets tend to gather through the week. Their brighter stands often stacked high with various goods as the sellers call any towards their booth with friendly waves and brighter smiles, whilst exchanging pleasantries with their regulars. Naturally, some of the traffic heads towards the inner streets of the city, which house more of the niche stores for specific crafts. One cart carries cloth to the tailors, different varieties from abroad piling high on the back as a passing tower of different colours and textures. Another figure rides horseback, no cart, yet navigates by a confusing map to follow some obscure cross half rubbed out. It has directions written on it, landmarks stamped with flecks of glitter, but very little to go off. They have considered stopping to get some actual directions if they wish to meet their nearest cousin this year. Between all of this, carriages pass through the street with no one paying it 2 glances. Some are ornate, decorated in house emblems and brighter tones as they're pulled by only the finest of horses. These are the carriages concealing their occupants behind curtains and walls with the windows covered in a finer mesh, some of them using lace patterns instead for the smaller details woven into it. Some houses prefer glass, too. Others blend in with the carts, plain tones and darker. It's a fine line between carriage and cart here, especially in the capital. Anything that carries people passes for a carriage, even if it lacks most of the walls. One passes us now, the roof nothing more than a waterproof sheet suspended by 4 posts, as a woman guides the horse down the street. A group of 4 younger kids eagerly jumping around the back, chattering about some trip to the forest outside the wall. They're mostly safe. This particular road remains smoothed by regular use, rather than the cobbled paths purposely throwing traffic in more residential areas. Though we really ought to be drawn to one carriage passing now. Of all the window fillings, the 2 are filled by stained glass with an emblem sitting at the heart of both patterns. It's the only show of their family crest, the crown at the centre with flowers woven between the details. Recent years removed the sword and the shield backing the centrepiece, leaving it instead consumed by the natural elements loved by the Empress. It was her crest, after all, her family and the choice she made once peace became wider spread. Both patterns span around this, rays of light drawing the eyes towards focus. The yellow curtains behind the glass, currently drawn closed on one side, pushes the tones as the light behind spirals against the canvas. On the open side, it obscures sight of those currently travelling in one of the palace's personal carriages, yet basked those inside with various tones of light. Another letter had come from the charms champion, insisting they had an audience with the royal in the capital concerning recent developments. Her mother agreed it was time Lyra could handle this, sparing her, rather thankfully, from the more mundane tasks, like the palace budget and new land disputes from the lower ranks. Besides her carriage's stained glass windows, there isn't much to look at. Its lining is dark in contrast to brighter walls, the deep blue pulling colour further into its depths as details trails of ivy and vines similar to the emblem. Each one of the doors then carries a subtle imprint of the family's initials, mainly caught in the sun's glances. A final jolt, and we all have arrived. The building itself doesn't stand out. Darkness doesn't call the capital home, after all, yet the distant home is still one worthy of respect. It sits tucked between the surrounding buildings with all of the motifs associated with the element from the stairs leading up to the door, with stars carved into them to the larger doors bearing the charm's mark. All elements hold a place like this in the capital. Most of this is hard to see, with a group awaiting Lyra's arrival though. To the side of the door, people have left the expected gifts. Coins, flowers, candles, and, for fancy cases, lanterns lacking the inner light. All designed to appease their slumbering spirit. The divine responsible for their element who fell years ago. Tales can vary. Sleeping, dead, similar enough for whoever wishes to believe. People like Nyx skip it all, using their element with little consideration for the past and paying tales little to no mind with their own daily lives. For others, it's their gift and their religion. Shadow's champion of peace, a pleasure to meet you. Lyra greets once her heel meets the pavement with a low click. It's more of a tap, announcing her presence to the man bowing slightly. Dark robes drag behind the shorter man on the ground, yet purposely laid by staff at his side, so that the train perfectly displays the embroidered crescent. Above the main layer, a curtain sits, as is a common accessory powered by the man's passive attention to keeping the blanket obscuring the truth of his uniform, it growing for various occasions. Kind of like Arden's jacket, but more official wear and uniform. Most casters of level could accessorise like this, passively spinning the balance to their favour, yet it is only of some level. The charm's symbol sits proudly across his outfit, on the robe's tie, another on his chest, and then one on the tail. It really catches the eye, the silver details gleaming in the midday sun. Around his neck, a golden-coated crescent hangs on the longer chain made of the same metal. It isn't the charm, but a symbol of his rank to wear one of these imitations. Most merely wear a star or a wisp, the latter often getting confused with the fire's main symbol, so rarely seen. In most regards, he does look young for his age. Nothing really gives away that he's likely pushing to his late 60s, besides the odd wrinkle. His short hair is put together without a single inference of stubble to give him a few years. Men always look younger without facial hair, and he's certainly taking advantage of that fact. Your Highness, the pleasure is all mine. I'm glad you could agree to meet on such short notice, given our current predicament. He raises his head as Lyra approaches the bottom of the steps. There aren't many, one or two leading up to the heavier door below another repetition of the element symbol. Truthfully, Lyra's been here plenty of times before. 4 figures join the pair, some more important than others. The first is Lyra's main guard, a woman who's been in the royal service since Lyra can remember, with skill to back her role. The second is the attendant from the earlier afternoon tea, her favoured attendant regardless of the woman's background and lack of rank. She has a dedication that Lyra has to respect, and she picks her own staff as long as her father is made aware of any changes. For the final 2, there are 2 of her ladies, both skilled in dealing with these matters should other opinions be needed. Yes, the letters have given me the basics. Is there any development? On the charm? None. We haven't had anyone coming forward to confess it's in their possession. Search parties have been sent out, checking similar villages across the Empire, and we are reaching out to the kingdoms not yet under the Tyrellian banner. And of the corruption? It has slowed, I'm glad to report, yet the altars are beginning to allow the imbalance to bleed. All scales have tilted themselves, and I received a warning merely an hour ago. The first tendril has been seen taking form. Our remedy is defenceless against the natural force. All the news I hoped we could avoid. Their voices come to echo through the main hall. A replica altar at the end of the deep black carpet. It holds a depiction to the old god, their closest estimation to what primordial darkness could look like, and instead opting to use their human form, with the scale in its centre. Its runner continues to map constellations across it, a finer chain wrapping between each object like that of the charm. Currently, one side of the scale is tilted by small weights, a visual reminder that darkness is currently shifting. Yet, they turn away, the man guiding the way down one of the halls through the lull in conversation as multiple heels click and tap against the uneven stone below. At this point, most of the women are used to such flaws with their shoes, even if flats would have been a wiser choice. Oh well. Lyra thought these heels, white with a single golden flower on it, matched her skirt. She still opted for a blue skirt today, like the sky surrounding the sun. Besides, she chose the purple bodice for the shade, with tradition deeming it more important to bear your own element, or lack thereof, in the presence of another's home. Light is no different, despite being the element's foil. You wish for an audience to simply inform us nothing has changed? Lyra begins as they make their way through the halls, and towards the back of the building, cut off from main roads. I apologise for the confusion and delay. My intent had been to organise a solution for these issues prior to your arrival, yet, as you can likely see, it is still in development. I should be receiving news of it shortly. I understand. And how long will we be waiting? Not much longer. If you would excuse me a moment, please enjoy the courtyard whilst you wait. I will find the solution for you. The champion bows, shuffling away from the group for a moment before he fully turns without true dismissals. He does miss the way the group he's swiftly abandoned in the courtyard exchange their sly glances before Lyra makes the first motion to sit by one of the fountains. Truxell, you wanted to meet? A shadow stands in the doorway, their robes reaching to the ground with nothing but a candle flickering to illuminate their face. It does little mercy, accentuating the wrinkles in his face and tugging unnaturally at them. Shadows coat his face the further away from the door he strides. Each morph him, shift and tug in their games until he settles before the archive's fire in one of the tall, backed armchairs. The other, across from the low coffee table, is occupied by another expected guest. It's at the front of the dusty space, cobwebs tucked from sight over the top of the further black back shelves. Here they keep it so that the fire always has wood stored to the side, tools laid on the other. Its guard is recently polished, yet a black finish dulling most reflections crackling off flecks of heat. The stones are freshly cleaned too, the champion notes, as the pale grey tones stand against those of the rest of the room's darkest palette. I wanted to reconnect about my previous offer, if you've considered it. Sal already checked the archives, dismissed any of the lingering keepers, and placed his guard at each end of the shelf to be certain no extra ears were in the company. His game is unorthodox, he's aware of this, but the strategy is one the Crown would never guess. Killing off the spoiled girl would raise investigations, whispers and someone would fall, those closest would turn in moments. Besides, the Crown's attachments are hardly worth his time. The paperwork and ceaseless complaining from those around him would be worse than it already is with his corner of the West, not to mention the scheming and two-faced smiles he copes with at his level. No, the Crown isn't what he seeks. So why kill off the girl? Collateral? Hardly his concern. I've considered our talk at great lengths. The donation is a generous amount, something worthy of the utmost respect. The robed figure of peace nods, eyes tracing the movements of the Earl. And yet, I don't see how else I'm gaining of this. I'd lose my standing, the respect for my name. There's a pause for the men, a silence neither wishes to fill for a moment as they share a glance. The robed one challenging to up whatever is on offer, the other refusing. It stays like that a while longer. Quite the opposite, actually. Sal takes over, his poster smile easing the tension at others' shoulders. People talk as if all elements are of equal weight, as if people really stand at each other's side. Yet, where I hold power, the dark thrives. Not because I cast, but because I control where it grows. And you hold the voice over that energy. It sparks a gleam through cold eyes, a pleased hum nodding by the flame's light. Cogs tick on mechanically behind the other's eyes as age hasn't taught him to mask such obvious schemes. Oh well. Sal can worry about that later. For now, he's considering it with a glint deep below, implicating a choice melting to fit the mould. I suppose whilst he thinks, I can finally tell you about the amazing carvings arching across the ceiling supports. Each beam follows the moon's journey, waxing and waning through each phase with the stars. Between the beams, the dark wood is painted to imitate the night sky with very subtle tones, most of it hiding in the shadow until light's welcomed into the space. The work took months, the carving even longer, yet the gift of the archive is one of the joys held close by the older figures usually keeping it. Wait, the men seem to have made a choice. They're just staring at each other again with their knowing looks. With that, the fire crackles once more, embers spitting between the group as it burns itself out in the air. To our own ears, a single pair of steps echo closer to the group, shadows shifting, but not due to one of our known friends. The champion raises a hand until it hovers before the Earl with a heavy expectancy. Sal flicks his wrist off the side of his chair, halting the steps behind them within a second before meeting the gesture. Very well. All pieces are set, and you have my silence. The handshake seals the whispered deal. Men down the aisle slowly sheathing their blades and shuffling back to their stances, without the supposed champion ever knowing otherwise. Now, moving away from the complexities of court and the veiled words of complex meetings, Lyra sits in the middle of a courtyard, admiring the darker blooms accenting the small fountain at the centre. It's pretty. She'll at least give it that, as it almost rivals one of the gardens in the palace. They have one to each element in some capacity, since they do house the concept of the balance. Yet, she has work today. The audience is already a joke, and her group can agree that this is some form of a veiling insult. If the champion is half competent, they'd solve the matter and then request an audience, or at least wait until there is confirmation before summoning time from her day. He's taking a while. Longer than ever expected to check such a small matter, though. She does suppose he could have been caught up by other matters. Possible, yet doesn't subtract from the disturbance it's setting to her schedule. Your Highness, perhaps I could go find him? See what's holding his time? Then, that's her main attendant, by the way, offers with a polite nod and a slight step forward from the guard station at the courtyard's entrance. Yes, please. Simply tell him that I sent you and politely inform him that I do have other matters needing my attention today. Wren is great. She deserves every moment of appreciation I can afford to give her for the work she does and the different tasks entrusted to her, regardless of it being a little less than traditional. The women sat at Lyra's side making casual conversation have to agree, their polite smiles masking the sly joy at what's to come. In a few minutes, the champion should have tripped on his own ego. Even the newer women to Lyra's circles are made aware that the attendants, especially those closest to her, hold just as equal footing. It's quite an insult, one of the women begins at her side. She's the daughter to one of the earls in the north, a few years older than Lyra and one set to marry the son of a count. A downgrade, perhaps, but one she's chosen rather proudly. It does not take this long to address these matters. You should regret it by the time Wren is done. The other smirks slightly, a subtle, vindictive side nurtured by her time in the courts. Wren gets away with things no other lady does. If I'm late to my meeting with those counts later, the champion will be hearing about it, Lyra passively remarks as she admires her painted nails. I see why my mother and father didn't wish to entertain his invite themselves. Yes, corruption is a serious matter. It could starve the towns, seep into the farms and devour most of the surrounding settlements so comfortably around the heart and would leave thousands homeless. One charm hits the next and the cycle would carry. It's still in the early phase. It can't have grown so quickly. But making them wait here, rather than working to a solution, will resolve nothing. Their only choice is to find the new charm holder, and have them balance the new element, establishing their role. So whatever idea he comes back with had better be more productive than the search party has already sent and the messengers making contact with the kingdoms beyond the Empire. It's unlikely the charm would go to another border, though. Scholars aren't sure why, exactly. The leading theory suggesting that it's because the gods fell within Tyrilia borders, those thousands of years ago. It isn't the element's heart that has to do with it. A few of the current holders are from smaller towns halfway across the Empire from their elemental home. In her thoughts, Lyra doesn't note the subtle shadow watching her, the twisted curiosity taking root as her own energy is shifting. Our company is spending less time shifting pre-existing shadows these days, but now it seems to summon itself from nothing rather than the tugging known by most. She's toyed with it these past days when our eyes haven't been watching her. There's no visual warning this way. None of the bushes glow under the noble's views, the ladies accompanying Lyra watching them with distracted gazes, splashing the fountain's water. Each droplet graces the flowers, spiralling up the stone carvings, loose branches lazily sauntering towards the pool. Lyra, one of the ladies begins, with permission to skip formal titles when out of the public's eye. Perhaps we simply leave if he takes much longer. I'd agree, the second echoes with a sigh, both growing tired despite the pleasant space. I mean, the sun continues to pass through the sky. Nearby clocks, already tick away at least 30 minutes. Lyra has most of her closest staff use her name where nobles won't complain. Not only is it her personal preference, but it spares time more often than not to avoid her long-winded addressal. Where others are around, it is different though. One tried to boast of such allowances before realising how common it was and finding that the cost for such loose lips lost her the position. All of this distracts from the shadows erupting behind them all. Dark spirals breathing new life as they swallow the nearby rays of light Lyra could plausibly grasp. She watches each take form. First, her guard's sword is sealed at her side with the wall reaching out to hold her form. She doesn't miss how the helmet is covered. It's almost like a visor covering the space more commonly open for eyes, yet it blinds and renders all skill useless, any past esteem falling void when she can't even see a foe. It waits, by the two noblewomen, watching the guards, flicking and shifting, as if the caster considered it for a moment, assessing the worth for little more than a second, before blinding them too, freezing each as they sit tilting dangerously close to the water. Lyra turns, searching for the exit before such threads find her too. She only turns to face an abyss, one unyielding to the light she pulls desperately in her hands, as no part before her ripples or wavers under what should be a fight. Lyra is pulling from the world, she sees as much when the shadows dot open stone, but no part chips away before her. A shadow strikes. Someone grabs Lyra's arm, earning a clear shout, demanding release and hoping it echoes down enough hallways to gain a little more attention. "What do you want?" Lyra tries to demand, kicking towards the person's hold on her despite the warmth leaving her hands as motions halt. Whoever has her is strong enough that it makes no difference, only pulling her along impatiently as the shouts of her friends and staff fall into a distance. Nyx can see. She watches the hallways as she pulls Lyra through the void she constructed, turning down a nearby corner before shoving her through the back door, where a plain black carriage waits in an alley's opening. "Success, sir," Nyx reports, pushing Lyra towards the door where Arden sits waiting. He only nods, gesturing for Nyx to secure the door. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of The Charmed, and I hope you tune in next time to continue the story with me. For now, have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.